Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Tina Talks Finance. Since I proclaimed this month Identity Protection Month, I thought I would start with something that is happening in record number: unemployment fraud. A lot of my clients who are struggling financially tell me that I'm broke. No one wants to be me, but that just isn't true. There are lots of other ways that someone can use your identity other than buying things. A few of those are they can buy medical insurance or use your medical insurance if they find the information. They can obtain employment, file for Social Security, open a bank account, file for public assistance, evade financial obligations, file fraudulent tax returns, file for unemployment. These are things that can happen even that have almost nothing to do with finance, but they also can be things that you'll have to pay back, like public assistance. If you receive public assistance or someone else does that's using your name, you may be required to repay that assistance. With unemployment numbers over 40 million and rising in our country due to COVID-19, unemployment fraud is at an all-time high. The Oklahoma Employment Security Commission reported on May 7th that 51,000 of unemployment claims in Oklahoma were fraudulent, and that number is still on the rise. For this reason, many Oklahomans are fighting identity theft and are not sure what to do, which is why I chose this topic first. We're in the middle of all of this uncertainty. The last thing that we want to add to that mix is fighting to prove that we are who we say we are. Please remember, as we're going through these items, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in at any time, and I will answer all of them at the end. The things you can do if you find that you are a fraud victim, you must file a fraud report with your local police department. Some police departments are overworked in this area and are no longer accepting, but they can give you further instructions about how to get a police report, or at least make sure that that has been reported to the proper authorities. You need to alert your employer. Make sure they know that it wasn't you that tried to file unemployment on your employer where you're working. Also, you need to report that to the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission. That is not easy to say. Online at my.ok.gov or Google unemployment fraud in Oklahoma and make sure it's a .gov site that you're going into and report it there. They have a form. It's very simple. Or you can call them, which, remember, the hold times are very long right now, at 405 557 7157. Also, I want to mention that the email addresses, the websites, and the phone numbers that I mentioned as we're going through, I will pop into the comments at the end when we post this Facebook Live. The Oklahoma State Attorney General's office is also requesting that reports be made to their office as well. And you can go to the same email address or same website, my.ok.gov, and click on the State Attorney General's office, and it's also a very easy report. We also need to report the fraud to the IRS at irs.gov. And as you've noticed, I've said .gov a couple of times now. The reason I say .gov is because that's a government website. If you go to any other website that says .com or .us or any of those types of websites, that is not a government entity. All government websites have the extension of .gov. Please don't make the mistake of putting your information somewhere where it doesn't belong. We also need to check your credit report for unusual activity. Don't worry about that too much unless you start to see something unusual. If there's one thing, you might want to be very cautious, but it's not a reason to worry. If you see multiple items, that is a time to just spring into action and just be smart. Put some common sense into where you're reporting, who you're reporting that to, and remember that your information is most likely out there. So worrying about whether someone's going to steal your identity is a worthless worry. However, we do need to be smart and make sure we're safeguarding our personal information as much as possible. Another thing that you need to do is freeze your credit report. Now, I always caution you, this is telling the credit bureaus that I may be a victim of fraud, and we want you to be very careful about who has access to my information. If you forget your passcode, it is extremely difficult for you to get a replacement passcode, and that is by design. If it were easy to get your passcode, then it would defeat the purpose of putting a freeze on your credit report and fraud alerts. So just be very cautious about who, and don't give that passcode out, but make sure you remember where it is, write it down, record it somewhere where you're likely to find it again. But do also remember that you have to lift the freeze when you apply for credit. Otherwise, no one is able to access your credit report. And probably a good idea to let your creditors know, hey, you need to let me know on the day that you're going to pull my credit report because I have a credit freeze due to fraud, and I want to make sure that you're able to pull my report when you need to be able to. Another thing which is different than a credit freeze is adding a fraud alert to your credit cards and bank accounts. This can make a transaction more time consuming because your bank, again, is going to be on high alert in your name. You've asked them to be very, very careful. So please don't get frustrated with your teller when they ask for your ID and confirm the information that's on your ID, or if you don't have your birthday memorized, which I can't imagine that would happen, but don't be upset if they don't believe you are who you are, say you are, because they're being very, very cautious, and they're doing that to protect you because you asked them to. Also, again, different than a credit freeze is filing a fraud alert to the credit bureaus to require proof of identity when anyone is making a transaction on your credit report. Please alert any potential creditors that need to pull your credit of the freeze and the alert. Just want to remind you of that again so that they can be prepared with the information they'll need. It's more information than we normally have to put in to pull your credit report, and it will solve some of the problems of making them frustrated with you. Probably not a good idea for your lender to be frustrated with you at the beginning of your loan. And if you just let them know, then they know how to handle that. But do also know it may delay credit approvals. So if you're wanting to apply for a credit card in the middle of buying something, that's probably not going to be a possibility. Most likely it will come back and say, this person has requested proof of identity. We cannot approve your credit request at this time. And it will give you further instructions or give the store further instructions to make sure that they know who they're talking to. Now, I threw a lot of information into that, so I just want to recap those action items. Report fraud to the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission, OESC. Make sure you report it to your employer, your state attorney general's office, credit card and bank or credit union, and to the IRS. We also want you checking all 3 credit bureau reports for fraud, because if you're not checking that and it happens a month later, we want to make sure that we can spring into action, because the last thing you want to do is find out there was fraud when you actually need to use your credit report. Also, place a freeze and a fraud alert with all 3 credit bureaus. And you can do that by visiting each website, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, and they would be happy to add those credit freezes and alerts to your credit report. And if you're a victim of identity theft, those are free. With fraud on the rise, I would encourage you to freeze your credit report now. This will better ensure your score and your identity remain protected. Just please, please, please remember that passcode. Remember, it is incredibly difficult to get that passcode reset. Any questions? I'll give you just a few seconds to type in those questions. Okay, we're gonna go once, twice. Okay, well, thank you for joining me for this edition of Tina Talks Finance. I hope you will join us next Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Time as we discuss why identity protection is important. Remember, if you like this edition and you want to see more, you can search hashtag Tina Talks Finance in any search engine to watch other editions. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.